Welcome to Thriving Entrepreneur with your host, Steve Kidd, third-generation minister and 30-year business coach. Listen in as amazing, world-changing authors, speakers, and coaches share their struggles and victories. And hear from best-selling authors' insight into how you too can live your life as a thriving entrepreneur.
This is Steve. Welcome to Thriving Entrepreneur. Thanks for being with me here today as we talk about helping your clients help themselves. So how do you help your clients help themselves? Really, how do you help them know what the best thing for them is in the current moment? What are the new ways they should be looking at things? How should they be treating themselves and their staff better? And what are some systems that they can put in place to be able to better help themselves, better address the market, and do the things that they're meant to do in this world? So all day, we're going to talk about helping your client help themselves and how they can be a thriving entrepreneur. It's going to be another one of these episodes where we're not going to have any commercials. We're just going to go right through and talk to some amazing guests. And with that said, let's jump right into our first guest. Hernan Taglioni. I know I said your name wrong again, Hernan. Sorry. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Tell us how to pronounce your last name.
Taglioni, Italian descent.
All right, there we go. The book is called Multicultural Mainstream. But first off, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, I was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Moved to the United States 23 years ago. My background has always been marketing and advertising. That's my degree as well. I have been working with international advertising agencies my whole career. Until 18 years ago, I decided to open my own advertising agency and specialize in multicultural marketing. Besides running this successful company, I am a business speaker and author. I love going to conferences and speak about diversity, equity, and inclusion, educate executives about the importance of being inclusive and being culturally relevant with their message, as mainstream is becoming multicultural.
For people who maybe don't know or have been living under a rock or something, explain to us what a multicultural marketplace looks like and is.
Yeah, so at the present time, U.S. is going through a cultural and demographic shift. And what I mean with that is that more than 44% of consumers are multicultural. And by 2028, that number would jump to 48%. So when you take a look of millennials and Gen Zs, again, more than half of them are multicultural. And so we're becoming a multicultural mainstream. We're becoming a multicultural nation driven by young generations that they're going to be basically driving this growth, and very important for brands and business owners to cater to these audiences. Within the multicultural market, Hispanics is the driving force. Hispanic consumers is the fastest growing demographic in the United States. And at the end of the day, if you really want to grow your brand, you grow your business, cater to multicultural consumers in a more culturally and relevant way, understanding their passion points, understanding their wants, needs, and desire. That's what is going to make or break a brand and a business.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. So what are some of the kind of really easy and basic things that people are kind of missing to be more multicultural, especially to reach out to the Hispanic marketplace?
Well, first of all and foremost, most of the time when they look at multicultural consumers, they see it more on a language standpoint rather than understanding the culture. So again, when you translate a message from, for example, English to Spanish, you have to be very careful who is doing that for the following reasons. There are more than 20 different nationalities that speak Spanish. So depending on what country are you from, we have different language variation. In English, we call slang. So that's why if you have an Argentinian translating your marketing materials, most likely will speak and write as an Argentinian. And then what you're doing is potentially you may be insulting other nationalities because you're not getting the message across because you're using their slang. That's why translations doesn't work. What we do as an agency and what we promote is transcreation. Another thing is when you translate, you're forcing a marketing strategy that was created for Caucasian consumers and forcing it in a language standpoint, hope and pray that it will work and it will resonate. It's like saying Australians and Americans are the same because they speak English. The reality is not. Your marketing campaign has to be adjusted to the cultural nuances of the American people. The same applies with Hispanic, for example, consumers. So transcreation is the best way I describe in my book what transcreational marketing is, which is basically creating a communication campaign, for example, appealing to the Latino core values or African-American market. Let's say there's another need that sometimes clients they have, respecting the overall strategy coming from the general market. So, how you position your brand the same way, that in a culturally relevant way, the message has been created for them and to them and speak to their needs and speak to the cultural nuances. Only then is when you're going to achieve that true engagement and results that every brand is looking for, turning those consumers into loyal ambassadors. That's the idea.
I love that. How does a person know what country or even region of a country the people that are in their primary demographic area, what they're actually speaking? How do they find that out if they didn't know?
Well, definitely the starting point is you have to understand your consumer's persona. So it starts with a solid foundation on creating, whether you have a market research done, quantitative or qualitative market research. That's where you find out who your current customer is, what are the different passion points, and also those who are not your current customers that maybe potentially they are buying from your competitor. So market research is the starting point to create this solid foundation to then develop the strategy, and then from there the campaign. Most of the time, from big brands to medium-sized brands and smaller brands as well, they look at more on a language standpoint. So again, forcing something that was not originally created for them, and on a language standpoint, force it to make it work. But the reality is it won't create the results that they're looking for. So understanding first the consumer's persona, do the research, understand why they engage with brand, what type of products they do it, how often, what image do they have about your brand or your services, products or services that you offer. And then from there, we'll give you a lot of powerful insights to create this short-term and long-term strategy.
So if I hear you correctly, you're not suggesting go to Google Translate, put in your copy, and just have it pop out whatever craziness it does.
That's the worst thing that you can do because you are going to depend on how the system, Google, will translate everything the best way possible. And that's when things get lost in translation, or it sounds very harsh, the translation, because it's done word by word. And in many cases, we have seen even the name of your brand is translated into Spanish, which you shouldn't. The name of your brand is your brand in English, in Spanish, in any language. So that's the worst thing that you can do, is to use Google Translate or have it in your website. You need the help of an expert or a team that can help you and guide to make sure that that message is transcreated in a very powerful and meaningful way that appeals to cultural nuances of the different multicultural audiences you're trying to reach.
Is it easier to have a button that allows them to be able to see it in their language preference, or is it easier to have like an entry screen that asks them what they prefer to watch it in?
Well, it's up to the client discretions. We have clients that they have a button that says, for example, Spanish or Creole, So they click on it and goes to the Creole version or Spanish version of the website. Is again, the message has to be culturally relevant. It cannot be a direct translation word by word. And we can't forgive right now. Website becomes the front window of any business. So when somebody is interested in buying your product or brand, the first thing they're going to do is to go to your website and get a little more information about it. So if you have it available in a language they maybe prefer to engage with your brand, you're creating a really good, strong impression. And always your first impression is your last impression. So having a very responsive and culturally relevant website as a starting point, that's what is going to start creating this trust from the beginning. It's not an afterthought that many brands, they implement this as an afterthought. They just put different language in the website. So it's going to have content that truly resonate and engage with these audiences effectively and efficiently.
Absolutely love that. I remember the old story, and you probably heard this one too, about how when the Chevy Nova went from the U.S. market to any of the Hispanic, any Spanish-speaking market, the word Nova does not translate real well into Spanish. Loosely translated, it basically means it doesn't run.
Right.
Not really the car you want to buy. So,
Correct.
really good example of knowing what you're actually saying to your clients. I love that.
Yes, that's why you had to be very careful when you tap to other markets within the US or outside the US. We have seen examples like this all the time. So brands that the brand name has a negative connotation in other countries. Like a great example, this Mitsubishi, when they launched the first SUV, the Montero, it used to be the word Pajero. So in Latin America, they have, in some countries of Latin America, they had to change the name Pajero for Montero because it had a negative connotation, the word Pajero in some countries.
I love that. So many interesting things that you learn. So let's talk specifically about your book. It is available today for free. Person can go out to Amazon and get it today only for free, and I will drop the link here for it in just a minute in case you didn't see it up in the description. But tell me today, what's your favorite part of the book? What's the part that just pops to your mind that you're really excited about?
I love the book, the way I put it together. Especially, it will give you an overview of how the country is evolving, is changing, it's becoming, multicultural. That's the bottom line. I also give some secrets about do and don'ts, what companies are doing right, what companies are not doing good at all, and then provide guidance in how to engage the market, multicultural consumers, in particular U.S. Hispanic market. That's what the main focus will be through the book, for being the leading, fastest growing demographic within multicultural consumers, and some valuable advice and suggestions and recommendations at the end of the book in how to create a very powerful and meaningful relationship with multicultural consumers, in particular with millennials and Gen Zs, that they're going to be the drivers of this growth moving forward for any companies and brands that are trying to see how they can grow their business within this evolving consumer evolution, basically.
I have a question for you, and my information is a little bit outdated, so it may not still be this way. When my children were in grade school, so this is a few years ago because they're all adults now, the particular school, the particular neighborhood we lived in was where all of the Hispanics that worked for Intel lived. It just happened to be kind of a little community, that kind of way. But in getting to know the people were still very excited about being Americans. It wasn't like they were trying to leave the country, but they had their own cultural prejudice, is the only word I can say, about other countries, even though, they may have, as we see them, all been Hispanic speaking countries. They were very, very different. Is that still the case, or has that I don't know, mellowed out a little bit, or what's it like in the marketplace now?
No, it's still there. You have people, they embrace others, and some people, they still have some stigma, right? The problem that we live here in this country, in particular with U.S. Hispanic, is the rhetoric that we constantly hear from politicians to media, that the Hispanic community is people crossing the border and taking jobs from Americans. That is absolutely not true. At this point, 75% of the Hispanic population is US born, 55% is second generation. So the growth is domestic. That's what the media and politicians are not talking about, well, for rating purposes and for voting purposes. But the growth is domestic. Second, third generation, bilingual, bicultural, higher household income, higher level of education. They tend to spend 90% of the disposable income, and more than 60% of the Hispanic community is part of middle to upper class. So that's something that I address in the book. There's still a lot of stigma about multicultural consumers, in particular US Hispanics, and it's time for companies to put their personal bias on the side and look at the business and how they can grow it in this consumer evolution era. But this stigma happens everywhere. It's just a little bit different of how in the US, for example, they see other audiences and they discriminate in certain ways that in other countries is not how they discriminated, But the book is a great tool and a resource to help people to have a better understanding on how they can grow their business. Where are we now? Where are we going to be? And gives you step by step on how you can grow your brand moving forward and your business.
I love that. It was a really great insight into just what you were saying earlier, that, just because a person, their parents or even their grandparents may have spoken Spanish, and maybe they even still know it fluently, they saw themselves as different being from, say, for example, Argentina, like you are, versus being from Colombia or Mexico. Those are just as uniquely different of countries for them, and I just, it was really cool insight to see, because I think it's all too easy for people, in the United States to just kind of see them all as, well, if a person knows how to speak Spanish, and looks like maybe they have that ancestry, that they all must be, and I hate to say it this way, but they all must be Mexican.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of how people approach it.
Yeah, that's you said it right. It's a strong misconception. As right now, as I said before, 55% is second generation. They're fully bilingual, they're fully bicultural. So speaking to them in both languages, but the key is the message has to be culturally relevant. That's the way of winning, for example, the Hispanic consumer. The younger the audience is, also taking into consideration their acculturation levels, they tend to speak more English than Spanish. But understanding the whole process of who is going to be buying your product and who are those influencers within the household during that purchase decision. So that's where you have to take that into consideration and have a culturally relevant campaign in both languages to get that consumer to take action and engage with your brand. But yeah, it's not just everything has to be done in Spanish. It has to be done in both. The culture is more important than language at time of execution, and that's what I address in the book. Unfortunately, a lot of brands, they're stuck in the language perspective, which they should be not stuck, embrace the importance of culture. Culture goes first, language goes second.
I absolutely love that. Well, and of course, people need to get multicultural mainstream, the power of Hispanics in consumer marketing. But also tell us, if a person wants to work further with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to my website, hernantagliani.com. There you will have information about me as an author, as a business speaker. If they need help in regards business-wise, in how to guide them and grow their brand. So then I invite them to take a look of my company website, which is thegroupadvertising.com, thegroupads.com. So definitely we would love to help you in how to set you for success and grow your brand with a strong strategy and plan appealing to multicultural mainstream.
Absolutely love that. Do you get Multicultural Mainstream today on Amazon? The link is both down in the comments as well as up in the description. Hernan, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, Steve.
What are you doing to meet people, who they are, where they are, and in the ways that their culture would say and do, and they're looking for things? It's a really great way to help your company, but also to help your clients find the help that they need. They're not going to come looking for you. They're not going to chase you down. You need to be where they are so that you can then help them with what you're meant to help them with. And that'll help them be thriving in all that they do as well. With that said, let's jump right in to our second guest here on Thriving Entrepreneur. Join me in welcoming Dr. Pat Ballone. Hey, Pat, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic.
So glad to have you here with us. First off, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, it's so funny. We have the universe right behind us, don't we? What a question. I show up being present to myself first, because I always believe that if you take care of yourself first, you can take care of others. A lesson that I learned from my father was nurture yourself first. And when you can take care of yourself, you have all the tools necessary mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and socially to take care of other people. And that's why I became a doctor.
I love that, but most all of us struggle with that. I mean, maybe there's some people that are like, I never do. I always take care of myself first. But most people, they have a hard time taking care of yourself. Why is that, do you think?
Because I think they had bad leaders. They have had, people who are, nothing against parents, but parents that lead. And so what a child sees in the first 5 years of their life, they mimic. And so, and then there's some of those like patterns, and that's what I help people with also in part of my personal practice is I help people get rid of those traumas that, are ingrained, in our brains, that this is the way things that happen, because those things sabotage us. And when we let, and even sometimes I've had those lessons myself where I had to sabotage myself in order to get that that's not the way to do it. And I think that that's a big hindrance for a lot of people. And then also is the awareness of it, because awareness is usually the first step to change, right? And when you have the awareness, then you can say like, well, this isn't going to work for me anymore, and you can declare that, and then you can make the other changes. But I think people have their influences when they're growing up are really ever present, and they don't ever really go away. That's why when you go have it, sometimes it's always much more fun to go somebody else's house for Christmas than your own.
So maybe, and maybe I should ask this one even first, but what does it really even mean to take care of yourself? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, what I think is that you need to take care of your physical, and just the same list I had before: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and spiritual, because you have to be physically fit. You have to be healthy. And that part of health is being in your optimal alignment, on a physical plane. And a lot of times people get injured, they never do anything about it. And they wonder why they got a limp 10 years down the line. And the emotional part of it, it's just like when you realize, and there's a technique that I learned when I was in chiropractic. And with this teacher who taught it, his name was Scott Walker. He's in San Diego, and I think he's still alive. But, he said to me, "You were abandoned when you were 2 years old." And I thought, this guy's crazy. And so when I got out of the conference that day, I called my mother up and said, what happened to me when I was 2 years old? And she goes, oh, you had pneumonia. We took you to the hospital. And I said, how long did I stay in the hospital when I was 2 years old? She goes, 3 weeks. I said, did you ever come visit me? And she goes, no, they wouldn't let us come into the room. So I'm thinking like, no wonder I had abandonment issues when I was growing up, but when I found that out, it was very like, freeing that I didn't have to respond in that fashion of how I responded to like someone going away from me, and where I'm going like, hey, wait a minute, come back here. And now I'm just like, keep on going, just like go the other direction. But that one piece. So I think that part of the emotional part of it, and then developing, like mental capacities, and I mean by that, like, being able to interact with people like your own age and interact with, and like figure things out, like not everything in the world. I learned a long time ago, everything in the world is not made against, like, up to against you. When I was 4 years old, I ran away from home. And when the police found us, my father always told me that bad people can dress up as other people. This is in 1959. I can dress up as other people and they harm children. And so when this cop came up and said, are you Patricia? And the kid across the street from me, his name was Mikey. And he said, are you? And we said, yes. He said, get in the car and I'll take you home. And I just grabbed Mikey by the shoulder in his shirt and I go, we're not going anywhere with this guy, and I said, the guy said, he called up the station. He goes, I found them, but the girl won't get in. And I just like my father told me that people dress up and they harm people. How do I know you're a cop? You could have stole that outfit. And that was when I was 4 years old. I was a terror. And so, I go, if you're so smart, then tell me how I can walk home. That I just wouldn't get in the car, and so we eventually, they figured something out where they called my mother up, and my mother came, I was only 2 blocks away from my house, came and got us and then walked us, back home. But she was mad. I can tell you that. And when my father got home, his reasoning for life is different. He said, why is it, that you left the street without permission? And I told him the story. Like, well, you asked 3 times, she didn't do anything, so I left. And he's like, can't do that. And then, on the way coming back, he goes, what did you learn? And I told him, I learned to know your street, to know where home's at. Because when I turned the street, I just didn't pay attention to what the houses looked like. So when I hit the right street again, I didn't know what it looked like. And at that time, they didn't teach you how to read and spell, when you were 4 years old. So it was, he was always like that, as far as a catalyst for like, what did you do that? What did you learn from that? Where my mother was just wanted to just like slice your neck and put you in the bedroom and like never come out for sure. That was her way of grounding. But he was a little bit more cognitive in his approach. And then, you have physical, emotional, spiritual. I can just remember just sitting in churches, like when my mother wanted to go to confession, and I wouldn't go to confession. I wasn't allowed to at that time, but I could just remember sitting there and smelling the incense. I think it set me up for all the meditation I did when I was in college and that type of thing. And then, there's there's like the combination of all that. Was blessed always with a lot of common sense and logic. So when things didn't make sense to me, I didn't jump into it. And I think that helped me out when I was a teenager too, because there's some circumstances I can think of. I have a lot of stories that were probably, major hazards were avoided because of that one piece in my makeup.
That's awesome. So is there ever a time when all of those different areas, all the different aspects of us, the emotional, spiritual, all of that, when we're really actually hitting on quote unquote all cylinders, or is there always one of them that kind of seems to be lagging behind or giving us trouble?
Well, I believe that, the universe is always giving you lessons, and the sooner that you decide you're going to learn your lessons, you can move forward. And so when I, had teachers in like, esoteric things like numerology, it's like nobody wanted to be in their ninth lifetime and haven't learned all those questions, like the number nine. And so when you had that ability to say like, I learned that, I can now move on, then you have, then you have more freedom, something else opens up. And so I always think that life is like this learning process that you go through. And um I always like when I'm looking at this, my backdrop, like today, I'm thinking about like I would love to be on a plane, train, or an automobile in some foreign country, because I like to see how people do what they do there. And I like to see people, the interaction of people and the quality of life that people have. And then saying like, well, what's different about it? And can you get that? And if you can get that, and if you can conceive it, then you can have it. You just have to like, put the pieces of the puzzle together, or find the right people who know how to do something that you don't know how to do.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Absolutely. So, some people have just never done this. So let's break it down to some really rudimentary kind of stuff. What is something that a person could do right now? Like they could turn off their radio and they could start doing X, and it would help them be able to begin to develop in those areas.
Well, I think, that I was taught a long time ago, the rule of one. Are you familiar with it?
No, not specifically.
Well, the rule of one is like whatever you want to do. Let's say that, I wanted to be healthier. So I wanted to have better mobility. So, but I'm not, I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to, like have mobility, and I wanted to, like experience, like motion, because everything's in motion. You have to move. If you don't move, you're going to die. So if you think about that, it's like, what is it that I can do? And the rule one says just to do one thing. So the rule one might be, picking up your water and drinking, one container of water in a day. It might be, my brother at one point in time was really quite overweight, and he asked me what he could do. And I said, walk down the steps and walk to to the street and walk back, because he had a hard time and he had very bad ankles, so he had, he's always was, like that. And so he was, resistant to like moving. I said, get a bike, sit on a bike and move to like, do something. And so at some point in time, he didn't do it right away. He did walk, 'cause he had to walk to his car. He had to walk like short distances, but he never really walked around the block. And so, like one day I went to his house, and he has, now has a bike, and he rides his bike for 45 minutes almost every day, while he's, watching some program that sinks in his brain while he's, and sitting up. He's working on his posture. He's working on other things. So, you can always do something to improve. So like how somebody does something, you just like, what is it? I want to read more. And so, you pick up a book, and you get up 15 minutes earlier in the morning, and, you sit up, or you like lay in bed and you read a book for 15 minutes. I'm not a very good auditory learner. So I decided 2 years ago that I was going to improve my ability for auditory learning. So I started listening to audiobooks. And now when I get in the car, I'm addicted to it. I'm going, and then I'll like when I get someplace, if I'm right in the middle of something, I'll listen to it a little bit longer. It's just, I'm sorry, a little late, but I wanted to finish that chapter. But I just think that you find things that, like if, whether it's just like, if you give me an example, I'll give you like a thing of one to do. But if you're consistent, consistency is important in anything that you do. Whether, it doesn't matter what profession that you're in. It doesn't matter, what it is. If you want to do something, you first need to make a commitment, and then you need to be consistent.
I absolutely love that. So give us an idea of what kind of things you do with people. How do you work with folks?
Well, there's numerous ways I work with people. And assessing where somebody's at, I have some basic, science-based assessments so I can see where someone's health is at. Because if health needs to be addressed, then you have to address it because you can't go backwards because mindset and health are basically your first step when you're climbing up your ladder of success. And so that has to be solid. It has to be ironclad. And if you can get that ironclad, then everything else will be easier because things happen. Like sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right? We all do that. But if you can put it in the right frame of mind, it's just like, okay, so that happened. What did I learn from it? What do I do to correct it? And so, and then that way you have like, okay, so here's the problem, here's the solution. Did that solution work? No. Okay, then it's like, what are 2 other solutions that I can think of, or I can find to get from point A to point C on that. So, that's one of the ways that, like I work with people. Then I look at like things that happened to them when they were growing up, like we talked about, in trauma and like in childhood, why people keep on sabotaging themselves and hitting the brick wall, so to speak. And, and when people say that they want to go, do something, people were always very envious of me because I traveled. I had a business and I left it 9 weeks a year. And we just figured out, I was married at the time, we just figured out how to create. So we had 3 weeks off, we had 9 weeks off a year. And that's when we started our practice out so that I could take a week, we take a week together. So we really only had 3 weeks in a year that we really needed coverage for in the chiropractic office that my husband and I had. So I had 2 weeks, and then the second week, and it just ended up being, and you could go and do wherever you wanted to do. And you also sometimes, Leonardo da Vinci says you have to go far enough away out of your environment so that you actually feel like you're on vacation. And so for me, I tried vacationing in the United States when I had my practice, but I was so busy, I felt like I was still there. Even if I was in California or if I was in Texas or if I was down in Florida, I still felt like I was working. As soon as I hit an airport, I walk up to somebody and say, how long have you had that shoulder problem? And they're looking like, how do you know that? And, then would find out like, where they're at. But I do things structurally with people. I also do things, on the mental plane and for mindset. And I really ask people, what's your immediate goal? What's your goal like this year? Your major goals this year. Let's say like, let's don't go overboard. Let's say, what are you going for this year? Because people have a tendency to overestimate what they can do in 1 year and they underestimate what they can do in 3. So if you take the goals and you understand, like, these are the things that I would always want to do and never had a chance to do them, and my business life, my career, my family life, then it's just like, so which are the ones that are the most attainable right now? Because you need to feed your spirit and you need to feed yourself goodness. And when you reach a goal, you're reaching goodness. You're reaching a level of like a certain level of success within, because healing does come from inside and out. So when you can internalize that, and then, even if you like throw in some affirmations in that mix, then you can create affirmations. You can ask like the why questions, like, why is it that I attract successful people? Why is it that I have the ability to get anybody out of the fire? And it's just like, so they don't have to stay in the fire and burn at the stake. Right. And so it's just like, why is it that I have the ability? Why is it that I can see things that people can't see? I can look at people who are, when they're walking and say to them, like, how long have you had that problem? And people are like, wow, how do you know that? And I always tell them I was a witch in my past lifetime and, or something like that to make light of it. But, the core part of that is being able to step in somebody else's shoes, even energetically. Because when you can do that, then you can like trek a path and you can lead by example. And when you lead by example, it's easier to follow you.
I love all that. So give us your contact information, your URL, or wherever you want people to go to connect with you.
Well, if you're on LinkedIn, it's easy. It's just, Dr. Pat, and my name is not on here, my last name, but I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. Dr. Pat Boulone. And then, on, Facebook, it's, Dr. Pat Bones, my personal page, and I operate primarily from there. For my website, it's healthteamnetwork.com. And there's tons of ways on there to interact with me. And, and I'm always I always say I'm available. My house is your house. Come and visit me. And that there's always enough tea. There's always a coffee. There's always something to be social and to be nurturing.
Well, Pat, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I love being it. It was perfect.
We all need to learn how to take care of ourselves. We all need to really understand how powerful and how important it is to be able to do the things that we need to do for ourselves. And often we need to bring in somebody from the outside to help us learn how to do that. And sometimes you can be like Dr. Pat, and you can be the person helping your client help themselves really know how to take care of themselves. And then they too can live as a thriving entrepreneur. Here is our next guest on Thriving Entrepreneur. Join me in welcoming Baird Hall. Hey, Baird, how you doing today?
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me. I'm good. I'm calling in from Charleston, South Carolina, where we're getting our first high 70s day. Spring's finally here, so things are looking up.
I love that. So first off, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yeah, I'm a co-founder at a few different SaaS companies, software as a subscription companies that we've covered a couple different subject matters over the years. We started building a podcast marketing software back in 2016. I think we started when there was 200,000 podcasts and scaled that company up until there was about 2 million podcasts out in the world. So it was kind of caught the wave at the right time. We also built a video editing and captioning software for social media creators. And throughout those businesses, as we were scaling them to 7 figures in recurring revenue, we got really good at growth. We're using freemium models and you're driving a lot of inbound traffic. But we wound up spending all of our time fighting churn because we were good at growth, but that meant a lot of low dollar accounts coming in and churning out for various reasons. So after years of working on churn, we took everything we built for those companies and spun it out into a new product called Turnkey, which I'm spending my all of my time working on growing and building. We've been around for about 3 years and we're a retention platform for high volume subscription companies.
So let's go more deeply into that. What specifically does Turnkey do?
So we partner with subscription businesses that are either on Stripe, Chargebee, or a few other supported billing platforms where their subscriptions are managed. And we help them lower their churn a few different ways. One is through personalized cancellation flows. So for anyone listening, if you've gone and canceled one of your subscription recently, maybe a streaming platform or a meal service or e-commerce product that you subscribe to, and you click the cancel button and they ask you a few questions, and then they happen to give you the perfect offer based on all of your usage and price point. They give you this perfect offer that encourages you to stay on the platform, whether it's a pause or an offer or a discount through the cancellation flow, and you wind up staying subscribed. That's one of our flagship products. We also help these companies recover failed payments for existing subscriptions and then kick off reactivation campaigns to win back canceled customers and also predict churn before it happens using AI machine learning.
I love that so much. So if I understand it correctly, the whole concept is just to try to keep those people to stick with you. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, that's the basics. Kind of maybe the next level of explanation there is companies have realized, especially companies with tens of thousands of plus of subscribers monthly, that most of the people that are canceling these subscriptions, they don't actually want to cancel. They just have something going on in their life, or there's some issue with the product or their usage. And really what they need is a different arrangement, whether it be a different price, a couple months off, a different subscription plan, or help from somebody at the company to figure something out. We essentially, Turnkey steps in as a middleman between the canceling subscriber and the company. And our software helps the two work together to find that better agreement. Because most customers a few years ago, before the cancel flow was a thing, just had a quick cancel button and customers would immediately in their subscription in that moment, when in reality 20 to 40% of those customers actually wanted to stay and would have if they were given the proper offer. So we kind of work in between the subscribers and the subscription business to help increase retention through better price points, better subscription intervals, or different plans in general.
So, and tell me if this is taking you off of what you do, but based on some of the things you said you used to do, are there some secrets in building your subscriber base so that you're at that place to just get the people in that you've learned over the time that would be helpful to people?
Yeah, I think it all starts with your pricing and making sure that you're optimizing your pricing for your target market. And we see a lot of different pricing models being used by subscription businesses. Kind of the most basic is usage-based pricing. So offering a pricing model that's based on how often your customers are using it, and that price scales up as they increase their use. That's kind of a really great way to get started. But also, the moment a user or customer doesn't have a need that month, they're going to go click the cancel button. So you need to have measures in place to try to save them or get them to a better arrangement. But also feature-based pricing or seat-based pricing, really just depending on your target market, making sure your pricing is in place, and then also making sure your activation sequences are fit really well with your target market. So how are you actually working customers into your product or service, and doing it in a way that makes sense for them and your pricing, so that you can activate those customers? Because if your customers never activate to begin with, they're impossible. They're very, very difficult to save. So I would say those two things are really where I would start. And then from that point, trying to understand which customers are canceling and why, what's driving these cancellations. And then you can start building a strategy to keep more customers around.
Absolutely love that you said, it's really impossible to retain the client that you don't get.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Absolutely.
times when you send an invoice or a customer swipes their credit card, you kind of do the happy dance and you move on, trying to get the next. You get back to growth and acquisition. You try to get the next customer. When in reality, if that trial or that first payment doesn't actually, or that second payment doesn't come along, you don't really have a recurring customer at that point. You had a one-time payment, which generally what a lot of us are trying to move towards is a recurring business model with subscription. So yeah, definitely a really important part to get first before moving on to trying to save customers that are there.
What are the kind of people that you see using subscription models that, quite frankly, if they ask your opinion, you would suggest them to go to a different pricing strategy than the subscription they've been doing?
Yeah, it's anything that has, recurrent, that if you're delivering recurring value on some type of recurring basis over a long period of time, that's just kind of the basics to look for on whether or not you should be offering a recurring model or not. For example, when we first started our video captioning software, it was really much more of a one-time usage. You upload a video, and then we would caption that video, and based on how long that video was, we would charge you based on the minutes. But as we started making more features like video editing features, video hosting features, we started seeing customers not just uploading a video once, but starting to interact with that video over multiple times in our software. And that's when the light bulb went off. We're like, wait a second, we should be moving to a subscription model that allows customers to do this on a regular basis versus really just trying to maximize our revenue today. That's kind of the trade-off that you make. If a subscription business, you're trying to optimize your revenue over a long period of time. So you're expecting the customer to be around and be active for long periods of time. If you don't expect that, then you want to move to much more of a product one-time purchase sale where you can get the most value out of that purchase today, because they might not be around next month or the month after. So there's no perfect answer here and there, but that's just kind of the general framework, I think, to start with.
I absolutely love that. So let's talk a little bit more about retention. I think the concept of when somebody goes to cancel, giving them, a discount or those kind of things people think of, but what are some other more unusual ways that you can kind of help retain a person, that says they want to cancel their contract?
Yeah, so that's a great point. It's really easy to build a cancel flow. Excuse me. It's really easy to build a cancellation flow that has a 1 month pause and a 15% discount. And anybody that touches the cancel button, they see that. And you're going to retain between 10 and 15% of your customers, at least from the type of customers that we're working with, which is subscription businesses that are generally like tech focused. But what we see our best customers doing is segmenting their cancellation experience based on different customer cohorts. So a really basic example of this is a customer that signed up 4 days ago and is canceling should get a very different cancellation flow than somebody that's been with you for 8 years and has spent thousands of dollars. So that's one really good example. And then the next level of that, the advanced version of this, is using their behavior, whether it's number of payments, how long they've been a subscriber, what features they're using, how much usage they've had, and using these behavioral data points to personalize the cancellation experience. So a good example of this, say you have a software where the marketing person, the COO, and the CFO are all using the same account. The CFO sees the bill, realizes nobody's been using it, and then goes to cancel the software. Well, at that point, the best way to approach that is to show the CFO in the cancel flow, like, hey, I know you want to cancel, but your marketing manager has automated reports running in the background that are going to, go away if you cancel this product. And that is one of the best ways when you personalize it and you remind customers of the value that they were looking to get when signing up for your product to begin with, reminding them of the value they've been getting and what they're going to miss out on. So the easy wins are the discounts, but we tell all of our customers, you can save 100% of your customers if you just give 100% discounts, but then your business is going to go downhill. So it's all about like finding this trade-off is what are you willing to give up? And then how are you communicating to customers as they're leaving of what they're going to miss out? And when you put all that together with personalization and segmenting and then giving the right offer to the right type of user, that's when we see our customers saving 30-40% of canceling customers.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, a person starting out. Obviously, the best thing for them to do is just work with you. But what are some tips that you can give folks that are just starting with their subscription model to both make it work effectively as well as put that retention model in from the beginning?
Yeah, I would say if you feel like you started a subscription model and you have product market fit, meaning like we talked about earlier, your pricing is fitting your target market and customers are activating, then generally you have product market fit. And then that's when customers generally come to us and they say, hey, things are going great, but 10% of our customers are leaving. What do we do? And the first thing we suggest is start collecting data, put a survey in place, start figuring out why customers are canceling, and then start segmenting those based on your high dollar, low dollar customers, and then your new and your previous customers. So like new churn versus old churn. So what's happening in the first 30 days as far as cancellations go, and then what's happening 30 days plus, and start collecting that data. And it never fails. You start seeing trends very quickly. You start seeing things like price sensitivity from certain segments. You start seeing seasonality. So somebody school's back in session and all of a sudden parents don't have time to use your product for whatever reason, seasonality. And then you also start seeing just business situations where customer might just need a break on an invoice, or they might just need to step away for a month while they work on new projects. So it's all about collecting that data on why customers are leaving and trying to categorize those and then come up with recovery plans for each one.
That's really good stuff. So let's talk specifically about working with you. Where does a company need to be before they can engage with you, and how can they do business with you?
So any subscription business that is losing between 50 to 100 customers a month, assuming those customers are worth $100 or more, or maybe even $50 or more, that's about when our pricing makes sense for customers to start taking action. But if you're losing thousands of dollars of recurring subscriptions a month, or tens of thousands, or some of our customers even hundreds of thousands are enterprise businesses, then it's definitely time to chat with us and see how we can help. We do have some bottlenecks where you have to be on a supported payment provider. We have a lot of the primary subscription management platforms as partners, but we also work with customers on a services basis when they just need help understanding how to collect better data, what strategies to put in place, and don't actually want us, deploying our software. So a lot of different ways, and the best place to find us is at turnkey.co, or I'm on LinkedIn as Baird Hall, which is I think I checked a couple weeks ago. I'm the only Baird Hall on LinkedIn, so I should be easy to find.
It's always nice when you have a name that is just like nobody else's. That makes it so much easier.
Yep.
Give us the URL for you again.
It's churnkey.co, churnkey.co.
And one last thing before I let you go, just give us some encouragement as to why a subscription-based model might be right for us.
Well, I've been on both sides of it, and I've transitioned a business from one-time payments to recurring base. And I would say that, one-time purchase models are great. It's a great way to get money in the door right away, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's really hard to plan as a business when your customer's usage is irregular. So we were doing 30,000 a month in revenue with one-time purchases, but one month it would be 15, the next one would be 45. I couldn't hire people because my cash flow was just up and down. So if you can find a way to use recurring revenue, even if you make a little bit less than the short term, you can plan, you can deploy capital more efficiently, you can hire more regularly, and expect less ups and downs. So I think that's the big advantage, and why everybody is trying to figure it out. And if you can do it, I think it's generally better on that side of the fence.
Well, Baird, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Yep, thanks for having me. Thanks, Steve.
What a great service to be able to help your client be able, when they think they want to cancel your service, to see, hey, maybe there is another option. Maybe canceling isn't exactly what I want to do. Or maybe there's other services or other ways you can help them. Maybe there's other plans or platforms that they would be better on. That isn't going to say that some people aren't going to cancel services with you, especially when you have a software as a service and those kind of things. But there are things that you can do to help reduce that churn. And in the end, they're all about helping your clients help themselves, which in turn helps you, helps your company, helps you live in the best way that you possibly can. Because remember, like I tell you every week, you are uniquely brilliant. You were created for a purpose, and the world needs you. That's right, we need you. Absolutely we do, to be able to really truly live and thrive and be all that you can be, to be the best version of yourself while it's called today, to make the difference that only you can make, so that you can then too help your clients help themselves in the ways that they're meant to do the things that they're meant to do in this world. And it becomes an ongoing circle. I've often said, wouldn't it be cool if even just for one day, everybody in the entirety of the world, the now 8 billion people in the planet, all just took one day and did and were the best version of themselves just for that day. What an amazing world that would be. I hope that you had a great time today, that you learned some things, that you helped yourself, and that you learned some ways to help your clients help themselves, and more importantly, how to live as a thriving entrepreneur.
Thanks for listening to Thriving Entrepreneur today. If you want to get your question answered, send an email to questions@wehelpyouthrive.com. We look forward to you joining us again next time.
Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a third-generation minister, an international best-selling author of multiple books, and I help people write, publish, and market their books to bestseller. In fact, there are literally thousands of people that have used the system that I created to be able to write, publish, and market their books, and now they're best-selling authors. And you're next. I just wanted to come on for a minute, say hi to you, tell you a little bit about me, introduce myself, and tell you I know the world is waiting on your message, and I would be so honored to be part of sharing your message with the world. Go to AskSteveKid.com and schedule a time to talk today.